The functions are activated once the user is seated.
Take 632, and we're back. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome. Listen, ever since I've watched that movie The Matrix back in 1999 on VHS tape, I've always been curious about this whole theory of, are we living in a simulation? Now, before you change the channel, before you go back to watching more Will Smith videos, just stick with me here. I think I got something. I'm so glad I didn't go to college now. Actually, the living in a simulation theory has been around for quite a while, way before The Matrix. And I didn't take it seriously until I started watching real scientists debate this issue. And I've tried watching a few of the debates, and it's very, very technical. So the question is, are we real? Am I a person? Do I like ham? I think I do. I really do. But let's see what the current theories say, and you be the judge. Alright guys, well, you see that little thumbs up button there? If you could, go ahead and just go ahead and push that in for me. That'd be great, yeah. Let's go ahead and take a deep dive. This is a video called 5 Reasons Why We're Living in a Simulation. The channel is called All Time. They are great people, and I'm pretty sure they wouldn't mind me using their video. The link for the original video will be in the description. Let's go.
Welcome to All Time Scary. Today we're checking out 5 reasons we might be living inside a simulation. As ridiculous as it might sound, it's entirely possible that we are all living inside a simulated reality, and that everything around us is nothing more than lines of advanced computer code. And let's look at reality from a different perspective.
I have not seen this, by the way. Part uno. Get it, part? No.
As it stands now, evidence keeps building to support the theory that we live inside of a simulation. Over the course of this video, you'll hear a lot of evidence. But what might be more troubling is the lack of evidence against the simulation theory. Evidence that proves the universe is in fact real. In fact, we can't currently prove that all of this isn't a simulation. New York University philosopher David Chalmers doubts it's possible to prove that we don't live inside of a simulation. He says, you're not going to get proof that we're not living in a simulation, because any evidence that we get could be simulated. Meaning, if the simulation doesn't want us to know something, we aren't going to know it.
Wow, true. If I was kind of buzzed right now, I'd be even more mind blown. But so basically, he's saying this. We're not going to find any evidence that we're living in a simulation because any evidence that we find
might be simulated.
Damn.
Interestingly enough, the probability of us living in a simulation versus reality has actually been calculated. Thanks to David Kipping, an assistant professor of astronomy at Columbia University, and mathematics way above my pay grade, we currently sit at 50-50 odds. One half that this is the baseline reality, and the other half that this is not.
So that's from a learned person with an education that we cannot prove that we're not living in a simulation. That's pretty crazy.
Kipping goes on to say, the day we invent that technology, and that technology being the ability to create simulations ourselves, it flips the odds from 50-50 to us almost certainly not being real, according to these calculations.
So basically what he's saying is, eventually, we will get so advanced that we can create a simulation so real that we won't be able to tell that it's not real. And then once we do that, the odds go to pretty much 100% certainty that we do live in a simulation. And continue.
It'd be a very strange celebration of our genius that day. Yeah, it only gets worse from here.
Part deuce. I'll stop now.
Recently, a friend and I randomly had a conversation about Princess Diana. Later that day, a person I had never seen before or since just so happened to walk by wearing a Princess Diana shirt. Was this simply a coincidence? Just an extremely rare and remarkable circumstance without an apparent causal connection? Perhaps I only noticed it because I talked about her earlier in the day. Nevertheless, coincidences like this stand out, and I'm sure all of you have experienced some of them yourself.
Totally, dude.
Now, is this evidence of the simulation updating to more closely align with our thoughts and preferences? It's like when you learn a new word and then you hear it everywhere, or you get a new car that you've never had before and then you see it all over the place. The amount of coincidences humans come across is, at the very least, questionable.
Very true.
It strikes me as odd that so many coincidences all occurred on this single planet. We're perfectly safe in the habitable zone, with the perfect mixture in our atmosphere to sustain us. Here's another one. During a total solar eclipse, the moon lines up exactly with the sun, obscuring it completely. That doesn't sound too remarkable or coincidental until you realize that the sun is 400 times larger than the moon. And amazingly enough, the moon is 400 times further away from the sun. It's mathematically stunning that it aligns so perfectly.
Just a random convenience or by design?
Or what about the fact that when water freezes, it becomes less dense? Again, this doesn't sound too remarkably coincidental, but the fact is, this detail has allowed all life on Earth to survive. Water covers most of the Earth, and chemically it is one of the strangest. Other substances get more dense when they are frozen, but liquid water is the opposite. Because of this, when water turns to ice, it floats. Why does this matter at all? Well, if ice didn't float, but instead sank to the bottom, all water would eventually have frozen over and killed all life within it. The multitude of ice ages this planet has gone through would have killed all life in land and in water. Our evolution would have completely changed or not happened at all if not for this strange detail. Another example is how the single highest point on Earth, Mount Everest, amazingly enough has the lowest oxygen levels that human life can tolerate. It's as if it was exactly measured out to perfectly allow for humans to climb it. Now, I could go...
I think that last one was a stretch of the mountain, but the point he's trying to make is it's awfully convenient that we are in this sweet spot on Earth. Perfect for animals to thrive and plants to grow. We haven't got hit by an asteroid in quite a long time. Could just be we're lucky. Other people would say it's God. Let's just hear the rest of this and see where they're coming from on this. But I do see what they're saying.
On and on about the interesting coincidences and synchronicities that our reality has to offer. So let's instead end this section with one more personal example of mine. It was about a sushi knife. I've never owned one of these tools before, nor did I know they existed, until I randomly had a dream about finding one in my kitchen drawer. Waking up, I thought, that's weird and random. I wonder if that thing's real. Now, this thought never left my brain. I didn't say it out loud. I don't watch any cooking shows. I didn't search up any dream meanings. It was just a dream and a thought. Well, later that day, I got an ad on Twitter for a sushi knife.
Oh.
I can't explain this. How did I go from never hearing of, talking about, or using an object to dreaming about it and then getting an ad for it?
Are they in our freaking minds now? I mean, Jesus.
This is something I did not know existed until I had a dream and I thought it was something I made up. I honestly have no idea. The world has so many strange coincidences and synchronicities. It really makes you wonder.
Real quick, I have a story of my own to tell like that from last week. So my friend, she was cooking hot dogs for dinner, okay? Which is a rare thing in her house. They normally don't eat hot dogs. What's even more weird is she received a text while she was cooking the hot dogs from her son saying he wanted hot dogs for dinner. That's pretty crazy, right? Let's add one more layer to this. Guess what I was eating when she told me this? Hot dogs. Coincidence? You be the judge. Part trace.
As we learn more and more about our world and the universe, the more it appears to be based on mathematical laws. For example, look at the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. It's found in nearly everything around us. Max Tegmark, a cosmologist at MIT, says, "If I were a character in a computer game, I would also discover eventually that the rules seemed completely rigid and mathematical, and that it just reflects the computer code in which it was written." Max's comments might sound a little out there, but over time it's been winning over other brilliant minds. One such example is James Gates, a theoretical physicist at the University of Maryland. James said, "In my research, I found this very strange thing. I was driven to error-correcting codes. They are what make browsers work. So why were they in the equations I was studying about quarks and electrons and supersymmetry? This brought me back to the stark realization that I could no longer say people like Max are crazy.
Huh.
A lot of brilliant minds are starting to realize that just as a video game is programmed and structured logically, our world is very much the same. As humans become more intelligent and knowledge continues to amass, the rules of our reality become more apparent." Delving deeper into the concept that our reality is structured in a very rigid and mathematical way,
Pretty
what are some of
cool.
these limitations of reality? Let's talk about a few of them. The first is the speed of light in a vacuum, given to us by Einstein's theory of special relativity. This is essentially the speed limit of the universe. But that begs the question, why? Why is there a limit to the speed in which light can travel? If we remove ourselves from this question for a second and return to the idea of video games, a potential answer arises. Video games are only limited by the weakest element running them: an underperforming CPU, a bottlenecked graphics processor, a limitation of RAM, a poorly optimized engine, etc. In all of gaming, these weakest elements create artificial limitations. For example, loading screens, draw distance, or texture pop-in. These are workarounds that are built in to accommodate the limitations. Now, let's bring it all together.
Actually, tonight, before I did this video, I actually had to re-download this video at a lower quality because my computer would not handle me reacting to a high quality version. So I think this is what he's touching on, is the fact that there's limitations due to the hardware you're using. And I think he'll tie it in right here.
The speed of light is the maximum speed limit of our universe because reality can't be rendered in less time than that. If we were to travel faster than the speed of light, we would reach a part of our universe that hasn't been rendered yet. The speed of light is an imposed limitation to keep the reality of, well, reality. If this is indeed potentially an arbitrary number set by the creators of the simulation to keep the simulation running properly, then one can assume that we can't travel faster than that because the simulation would break, and the reality of this reality would collapse. Essentially, the game would crash.
Pretty cool, man. Park Quattros.
Consciousness is defined as the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. It's one of the most familiar parts of all of us, and yet also the most mysterious. Since the dawn of time, philosophers have asked, what is the purpose of consciousness? Why do we need consciousness? These deep philosophical questions have challenged the greatest minds throughout history, and thanks to the simulation theory, we might actually understand its purpose and why we need it. Consciousness is an interface between the self and the universe, using
Ooh, I like that. Consciousness is an interface between us and the universe. That's pretty crazy.
all of our senses. The only reasonable explanation for consciousness's existence is that it is there to be an experience. Keep in mind that consciousness doesn't provide an evolutionary advantage that we know of, so what is the purpose of it? Either there is a role of consciousness at work that we don't know and haven't theorized yet, or the experience that consciousness provides is a function we serve, as in a product we create, an experience we generate as human beings. We are the ones creating this experience, and that is what consciousness is. Now, this is where things get uncomfortable, and again, if you're kind of lost, just stick with me. In philosophy, a qualia is defined as an individual instance of subjective conscious experience. Put simply, a qualia is the breeze of wind against your face, the taste of water, the excitement we feel when great news happens, as well as the fear created by bad news. All these experiences of consciousness are what we produce, and an individual experience is called a qualia. As I mentioned earlier, consciousness is something that we create that is not necessarily for us. Who do we create this product for? Who receives these created qualia algorithms that we produce? We don't know. But what we do know is that we are creating this consciousness, this experience, and that we apparently don't have any use for it.
This is getting deep, man. I might need a couple of bong rips real quick. Sorry.
So the only logical next step is to surmise that this product serves something else. Which begs the unsettling question of who or what is this product for?
It reminds me of how, like on Facebook and stuff like that, we have settings to where we can turn it on or off if we want to send feedback to them on what we're thinking and choosing. and they can give us stuff to feed us depending on what we choose, if that makes sense.
If you haven't already made the connection to the simulation theory yet, let's break it down in the simplest way possible. When you are playing a video game, let's say Grand Theft Auto, is the character in the game you're playing as experiencing qualia, or is it ourselves? They do what we want them to do, and they act out the actions that we tell them to do, and by extension, we are gaining an experience through them. That is the qualia. They aren't gaining it, we are. The video game character goes through an experience, but their experience is very different from the experience we, the player, receive. That space between the character in the game and us, the player, exists in this gray area where experiences of the player and experiences of the character combine to form some type of consciousness. This is what the simulation theory believes consciousness is. Consciousness is that strange connection between us, the guiding voice in our head, and the experiences we live and feel on a day-to-day basis. It's the product we produce for whatever is on the other side of the simulation.
That was pretty
That
crazy.
product that we produce, we have a very similar connection to that in games today. It's extremely rudimentary, but we are already seeing technology begin to blur the boundary between us. When riding in a roller coaster as a character in a VR game, we feel the gravity of the roller coaster. But where's this gravity coming from? It isn't real, and yet it is. It exists somewhere in the space between the character that is riding the roller coaster in the game and our minds occupying the mind of the character. The gray space between us, that is consciousness. It's easy to imagine how in the future this experience will become grander. More experiences, more feelings, more qualia generated. For us. Video games are a $1 trillion industry currently, and this is all based on the small amounts of qualia we experience from them today. Just imagine the future 10 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. The demand is there, the desire is there, the money is there, and the interest is there. It's inevitable. Based on the simulation theory, the simplest explanation for the existence of consciousness is that it is an experience being created by our bodies and actions, but not for us. Just like a video game, we create incredible outputs of sensory experience, qualia generating machines. And just like a video game, our input, our product, is most likely for the benefit of someone or something else experiencing our lives through us.
I think he's saying that everything we experience can't just be for the sake of experiencing it. Everything else in the universe is set up to where it's for a reason. Maybe the reason why... It kind of reminds me of this thing I heard about one time. I'll pop up on the screen if I can find it online when I'm editing this video. A certain type of animal or something that lives off of people's dreams. It's an old myth, but they actually live and feed off of people's dreams. I think there was something else that feeds off of people's emotions. But you kind of wonder if the things we're experiencing are being monitored by something else that we can't see. Sounds crazy, man. Sorry if this is way out there.
2,000 years later.
Okay, last one, guys. Last one. Part 5? Is it 5?
DNA is a self-replicating material that is present in nearly all living organisms. DNA is, in simple terms, nature's hard drive, capable of storing, replicating, and transmitting massive amounts of information. Everything from your physical features to your likelihood of dying from a certain disease. It's the incredible secret behind life, and for as much as we know about it, there is still so much more that we don't. Researchers in New York incredibly found a way to use DNA like an actual computer's hard drive, by successfully storing, replicating, and retrieving several digital files. And no, this isn't a joke. These scientists were able to transfer real-world information into binary code, and with the help of a DNA constructing startup company, they were able to implant that data into DNA as well as retrieve it. Amazingly enough, this means that DNA is not only storage for biological data, but in fact a form of digital storage for any data. It is estimated that 1 gram of DNA can hold up to 215 petabytes, which is equivalent to 215,000 terabytes, or 225 million gigabytes.
That is crazy. So they've actually figured out how much technical information our DNA can hold, down to the terabytes, like a hard drive. That is cray-cray.
Essentially, DNA is the world's greatest storage device, and we are walking around with massive hard drives of data and legacy within us. DNA is, in a way, our own personal memory card for whatever this game of life is. But it somehow gets even crazier from here. That data and information that they were able to place inside of and retrieve from DNA wasn't all they tested. In fact, they also placed malicious computer code into those physical strands of DNA. Their aim was to show that computers working in gene sequencing were vulnerable to attack, and that a malicious code implanted in DNA could in fact attack those computers. But they might have also inadvertently revealed that what we perceive to be biological reality is in fact computer code. Our very DNA has the capability of carrying malicious computer codes and viruses that can infect other computers and perhaps even one day other humans. It really makes you wonder about all of this.
Wow.
Life, existence, the simulation theory, the very thing that constructs us, the DNA inside of our cells, can store and run computer code as well as viruses? What exactly are we? Are we nothing more than advanced computer code in a simulated reality? I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm simply exploring the possible reasons we could be living inside a simulation. Let me hear all your thoughts below, and if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and click the bell. Until next time, never stop.
Anyway, guys, that's the video. Appreciate you being here. Well, hey, listen, any thoughts in this video? I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a comment below. Anyway, guys, appreciate you being here with me so much, and I will see you next time. Wow, you're still here? Holy crap. Well, hey, I appreciate you watching the full video. Also, a huge shout out to my channel members as well. If you want to follow me on social media, on Instagram and TikTok, Pro Judas. Also, if you want to help support the channel, you can consider becoming a member. Just hit that join button. Or there's also clothing and merch as well. Those links will be in the description. Appreciate it, guys. Later.
There's a place inside my mind, a place to lie behind. You don't know the chances. What if I should die?